as I call it, report card looks like when we receive the information back from the CF Foundation race. And I would like for you guys to meet Kathy Hernandez. Is she around? Because all of the information I'm going to present has to be sent to the CF Foundation by someone, and it's a massive amount of information. And Kathy Hernandez is our database expert that spends her year just entering all this data and reporting it to the CF Foundation. And given that, you know, we are a fairly large center, the work that she does is just tremendous. And she just finished last week, and ahead of time, actually, the report to the CF Foundation for the 2010 data. So thank you, Kathy, for your work. So before I present the data itself, I want to give you a little bit of background info as to what is the Stanford CF Center, because I think this will help you understand some of the information that comes later. First of all, we are now the largest CF center in Northern California, and I'll show you some info there. We are very much on track to become, over the next few years, the largest CF center in California, which is important because California has the most CF patients in the nation, according to the CFF. With close to 2,200 CF patients, it's the state that has the most CF patients in the US. We now have taken the top position. We have the largest adult CF program in the whole state of California. It's the only CF center in the region that has an active lung transplant program, and both for pediatric and adult patients. And it's the only CF center in California, as Dr. Ramsey presented early on, that has a translational designation, meaning we're a center of specialized expertise in CF research. So we're a regional leader in CF-related research. And to me as a clinician, more importantly, we basically have come to be a center that provides a safety net, as I call it, for caring for the sickest patients with CF in the whole region. We see patients that come from Oregon, Nevada, Southern Cal, because of our specialized expertise on dealing not just with the bread and butter, but also with the most complicated cases. So these are some things that you need to kind of keep in your back of your mind as we present and review the data. Now, very quickly, you know, what we mean by a CF center. We're a CF center nowadays, the way we see it here, Stanford is a fairly complicated organization. Not only we do clinical care, and this is how most CF centers started and are still just focused on that, on only having a clinic, but we also have research and very strong research projects, as well as a very strong teaching components. It's part of our mission to teach future generations about CF. Now, this is our growth over the past few years, and truly since 2005, it's very rapidly taken off. We're poised to be past or very close to 380 patients in the registry for 2010. And again, we just closed the data for 2010. But that's without counting patients that are not participating on the CF registry. Remember, you need to sign consent to be part of a registry, and also not counting all of the post-transplant patients. So we put it all together, and we look more at the Stanford Medical Center medical record database. We have way over 400 CF patients that come to Stanford. So again, we're very much on track to, within the next 2-3 years, be the largest center in California and one of the largest in the US. The biggest centers in the US have somewhere between 500 and 600 patients, and there are only 2 of them that I'm aware of. So when we look at the outcomes report, again, we send data to a CF registry, and then after a year of working on that data, they send us back a summary of what our information looks like. And it has 2 main components the way I see it. You know, one is the health outcomes themselves, meaning how are we doing in terms of nutrition, what our average patient looks like in terms of nutritional parameters, what our average patient looks like in terms of pulmonary function, what are the rates of infections that we deal with, what are the complications we're dealing with. And then the second part, which is the one that I truly pay more attention to, is what I call process outcomes, which is, okay, what tools, what medications we're using, how we're prescribing them, and more importantly, you know, are we screening for complications, are we meeting guidelines of care? So when it comes to nutrition, and it's broken down nowadays between pediatric patients and adult patients. For pediatric patients, what we use is what we call the CDC, or Center for Disease Control, normative data. which basically, compares kids with CF with kids who don't have CF, and trying to tell you what their nutritional outcomes look like compared to a non-CF situation. And one of the parameters that has, over the years, proven to be the most helpful to be able to tell if a kid with CF is well nourished or not is the BMI, which is body mass index, meaning how much weight you carry in your body frame, to put it in very simple terms. So when we look at this, now the CF Foundation is breaking it into babies, meaning kids less than 2 years of age, and then kids from 2 years to 18 years of age. So when we look at babies, the red bar represents where Stanford stands among all the centers in the country. Okay, so every blue bar here represents one of the centers in the country, and again, Stanford is the blue bar, the red bar. And here what we're looking at is the weight for length percentile, which is one of the parameters that we use to see if a baby is well nourished or not. And according to the CDC, based on their measurement of many kids that don't have any diseases, the ideal is for the weight for length percentile, and I lost my arrow there. Oh, there's the arrow, to be at around the 50% mark, okay? Because that means, that half of the population, or the average population, will be on that parameter. So what we're seeing is that, most of our babies, on average, are very close to that 50% normative value. We are at 47.7 as the percentile for our average baby at Stanford. And if we look around the country, which is this green bar here, shows us the national average. The national average for babies is 47.8. So we're very much on track with what the national average looks like. However, what we know, and this is an extra piece of information the CFF provides nowadays, is what it looks like in the 10 best performing centers, which is like saying, okay, we know that this is the national average, but what it looks like on the places that have the highest values. And what we're seeing is that it's about 70 percentile. Okay, so we're obviously, many points behind that, but we're very much on track with the national average. Now, when we look at kids from 2 to 20 years, what we're seeing is that our average is about 50 percentile, which again tracks well with what would be the expectation on somebody who doesn't have any disease. But is very much on track with the green bar, which is this one on the left-hand side, which is the national average. So our average nutrition for kids 2 to 20 years is very much on track with what the national average looks like. But again, if we look at the overachievers, we're many points behind what is seen at the 10 best performing centers. Now, for adult patients, we don't, well, one very important thing is, okay, let's say that you have kids that don't have good nutrition, and that the parameter for that is less than the 50th percentile. Are those kids getting the services that they need? Meaning, are they being assessed by a nutritionist that they follow and manage more aggressively? And the good news is that on that parameter, we're 100%. Okay? We're very much meeting the goal that the CF Foundation has established, which is if a kid has malnutrition, it needs to see a nutritionist, it needs more aggressive management. So thanks to Julie, we're now very much meeting the national benchmark for nutritional assessment. Now, for adult patients, we don't look at percentiles, we just look at the BMI itself. And the national goal is for the BMI in an adult to be at least 23. What we know is that it's really hard to reach that bar. The national average, which again is the green bar on the left-hand side, is 21.9. And our average adult here at Stanford is at 21.5. So we're pretty much around what the national average looks like. And certainly behind, again, the overachievers who are very much on that benchmark of a BMI of 23. And when it comes to, okay, let's say that they do have malnutrition, are they being seen by a nutritionist? Thanks to Lara, again, we're on the top 10. We have 100% compliance with that benchmark, as opposed to other places where, unfortunately, rarely ever a malnourished patient is able to see a nutritionist. So we're doing very well on that. Now, where I think there's still a lot of room for improvement is what is happening to that BMI percentile in children. What I'm showing here, because we can track nowadays this data year by year, is what has been happening over the years. And what this is showing you here is that, we have sort of ups and downs. We don't really have a trajectory towards trying to get better on that parameter. We're basically moving around the same value, as opposed to those 10 best performing centers in which if you will plot to this same type of graphing, what you will see is that year by year there's a slow incremental improvement in that parameter. And when it comes to the adult patients, we're seeing the same type of phenomenon. The year by year, there's a little bit of just wiggling around the same number, meaning we're not really making a very definitive trend towards a yearly improvement on that parameter. Now, the second thing that is of great importance to a CFF and obviously to patients with CF is pulmonary function. CF disease is primarily driven by the pulmonary manifestations. So we track pulmonary function very closely. So one of the things that we monitor the most is the FEV1, which is the volume that is forcefully exhaling 1 second when you do your spirometry or your PFT test, as we call it, because that's a very good marker of how open the airways are, how much disease is going on the airways. And it's proven over the last 5 decades to be a very good parameter to monitor CF patients. Now, Dr. Ramsey was alluding this morning at the fact that, we think it's maybe falling short when you don't have too much lung disease yet, but it's still a very good marker of the presence of any disease activity. So the ideal is for the FEV1 to be normal. If your lung function is good and your treatment is working well, you should be able to maintain a normal FEV1. What we're seeing in patients from between 6 and 12 years, because it's hard to get a good PFT in kids younger than 6, is that the average patient at Stanford has an FEV1 that is around 90%. So again, it's 10 points short of that ideal 100%. And we know that that is, nowadays we know is an achievable outcome because, well, the overachievers are, if anything, a little above that 100% mark. If you look at the 10 best performing centers, they're all well above that 100% line. When you look at the teenagers, if anything, I think, and I was very nicely impressed by this, because I was thinking, okay, if the little kids are a little behind the teenagers, you know how they are, they're going to look just terrible. But we're seeing that it's all the way around. If anything, they're getting us very close to being the top 10. Their FEV1 value is quite good. And I'd like to explore this a little more and try to understand why the teenagers, if anything, are doing better than the younger kids. There's something very important to learn there, because again, we're doing quite well and pretty close to what the top 10 are doing nowadays. We have very well preserved pulmonary function in the teenagers. Now, when we look at the group in general, when it comes to how we're doing with this parameter over the years, again, over the last 6 years, what we're seeing is kind of the same thing that we see with the nutritional outcomes. We're just wiggling around the same number. We're not really making a very positive incremental upward trend, which is what many other centers are experiencing around the country. Now, we know that nutrition, and I spent a good deal of my career trying to understand how nutrition is so tightly linked to pulmonary function. So the CF Foundation is nowadays looking at this relationship between FEV1 and BMI and has delineated a goal for kids to be on this right upper hand corner. Basically, what I'm plotting here is the FEV1 on this axis and the BMI on this axis, the BMI percentile. And the goal is, again, for kids to have normal pulmonary function and normal nutrition, which is this blue square here. And we are right here. Okay, so we are short of fairly close to be at goal for FEV1 and pretty close to being very much on goal for BMI. But again, the ideal is to have every kid with CF be on this blue square here with normal pulmonary function and normal nutrition. So still we have a way to go, and really from 2008 to 2009, which are the 2 years we have this type of displays available, we haven't been able to make much movement. When it comes to adult patients, what we're seeing in terms of their FEV1 is that it's staying a little behind what we see as the national average. Again, the green bar on the left-hand side is the national average, and the red bar is what we see at Stanford. And there may be a number of things that play into this, starting with the fact that, remember, I started saying we have like a safety net. The sickest people are the ones who come here, and we have a transplant program. So in some way, our numbers here are probably diluted by that fact. But I don't want to explain the data. What I want is to try to make patients do better. And when it comes to patients older than 30 years, meaning if you live with CF for more than 30 years, how are you doing? I was very nicely impressed also by this data, because what it's telling me is that we're very much on the top 10. Our patients that get past 30 years of life have very good levels of pulmonary function that are placing us on the top 10. Now, if you count the bars, there are actually 14 here, but there are a few ties in there. So our number is a top 10 number. Now, when it looks at what has happened with FEV1 over the years in adult patients here at Stanford, it's the same phenomenon as with the kids. We're kind of wiggling around the same number. We're not really making an incremental positive trend in there. So when I look at this, particularly the pulmonary function data, and seeing that, well, for most things we're kind of average. I don't like being average. I'm also an overachiever. So I'm trying to understand this better as to what might be the reasons behind it. So if you know CF really well, you know that germs, infections are very important drivers of CF pulmonary disease. So the first question that comes to mind is, okay, is it because we're dealing with more severe infections, more resistant infections, more difficult germs? So the first thing that comes to mind is to look at Pseudomonas. And if anything, the nice surprise here is that our rates of Pseudomonas are kind of high, kind of low compared to what we're seeing nationwide. There are places where in kids particularly, and this is what I'm showing on this graph, on children younger than 18, our rate of Pseudomonas is only about a quarter, 26%. And there are places in the country where the rate of Pseudomonas in children is 60%. So we have less than half the rate on the highest centers. And we're very much on this one. It's a good one to be on the bottom 10. We're pretty close to that bottom 10. So we're not seeing as much Pseudomonas. Well, then we may say maybe because we treat the Pseudomonas or we keep it away is other germs. We know that there are other really bad players when it comes to infections in CF. And this is if you were wondering about in the adults, where in adults we're not seeing really any higher than what we're seeing on an average CF center. And if anything, it looks way below what we're seeing in places that have a lot of problems with Pseudomonas, where 90% of our adult patients have Pseudomonas. Here is more around 70%. So if I look at other germs, B. cepacia is one that has a really bad name within CF because it's a very aggressive germ. Well, the good news here, as with the Pseudomonas, is that we have very low rates. We're one of the few places that is blessed, in spite of our large size and our many programs that deal with complicated patients, to have very little cepacia acquisition. And if anything, if you do the math, is about 7 patients that have cepacia that come here. I think the majority of them came from elsewhere, meaning it's not that they're acquiring it as we treat them. So it's a piece of good news, but again, it doesn't help me explain what we're seeing with FEV1. And if we look at other germs like Xanthomonas, Maltophilia, also we see very low rates. And if we look at a germ that is getting a lot of press nowadays because of very scary news called methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, we are also blessed with having very low rates of MRSA. And if anything, and this is another good and nice, pleasant surprise, is that the green line represents what we're seeing nationwide. And nationwide, there is a, year-by-year increase in rate of MRSA acquisition. Here at Stanford, what we're seeing is more like a flat line, meaning our rates of resistant organism acquisition have been very flat. They're very constant. So it's a good piece of news. But again, it doesn't help me explain what's happening with the pulmonary function. So what about drugs? Are we using the right medicines? Are our patients getting prescribed the things that the CF guidelines and experts recognize as the right medications for CF? Well, if we look at common things like albuterol, for example, we have very high rate of usage of nebulized medications like albuterol. We're at 95%, which puts us above the national average. And we look at more established CF-specific medicines like pulmozyme. We also have a fairly high usage of pulmozyme. About 90% of our patients have a prescription for pulmozyme. And if we look at the more recent upcoming things like hypertonic saline, it's the same thing. We have a very heavy usage rate of hypertonic saline. And when it comes to inhaled antibiotics, and here we're looking at patients that do qualify for an inhaled antibiotic, meaning patients that have chronic Pseudomonas. About a little over 2/3 of our patients are on Toby, and about 30% of our patients are on colistin. So this, if you put it all together, means that basically all our patients that have Pseudomonas are getting antibiotics to deal with the Pseudomonas. We're not ignoring the Pseudomonas. So I'm not able to explain the pulmonary function issue. So if you remember, the CFF, among many things, also convenes panels of experts to put some guidelines for care. And the current recommendation is that patients with CF, at a minimum, should be seen quarterly, meaning every 3 months, for healthcare maintenance visits, meaning no matter whether you're feeling great or sick, you should still come to a CF center every 3 months. And during clinic visits, patients are supposed to get Coulters, to get PFTs, at least once a year to have laboratory evaluation, and at least once a year to have some form of diabetes screening if you're older than 10. And to at least once a year be seen by a nutritionist and by a social worker. So how are we doing when it comes to meeting these minimum standards? Well, if you look at the number of kids that have met this guideline, meaning that have been seen at the CF center at least 4 times in a year, we're pretty low there. Less than half of our patients have been seen 4 or more times. And if we look at what has been happening over the years, what we're seeing is that, well, at least over the last 3 years, we've been putting much more attention to this, but we're still not having a good positive trend that year by year we're doing better and seeing patients the number of times they need to be seen. When we look at the adult patients, it's the same picture, and if anything, it looks lower. And if you look at the trend over the last few years, we're not really getting anywhere in trying to get close to at least what the national average is, which is at least 60% of the patients are seen 4 times a year. When it comes to glucose screening, unfortunately, we're pretty much with the bottom dwellers right now. We're very low when it comes to doing that yearly screening for diabetes. And again, the trend, if anything, you look at some point we're making progress and now we're losing momentum and getting pretty low on that. So the goal is, again, for patients to have the glucose screening every year and to have their 4 visits a year at a minimum, which is this blue square here. And what because nowadays, if you're techie enough and know how to navigate the web, you can get the same kind of information I'm showing you for Stanford for every place in California, because you may say, well, places in, I don't know, Manhattan, probably because there's so much wealth in there, they have the ability to do all these things. But if you look at our own region, at our neighbors in California, we're really at the bottom of what other places in California are able to do. So it's not a local phenomenon. Some of them are doing much better than ours. So the CFF established this quality improvement initiative 10 years ago with what they call the 7 worthy goals. And first of all, they were very focused on making CF care a partnership with families. You have to be part of this care. It's not us delivering something to you. You have to be part of this. We do it all together. And one of the main goals that was identified right off the bat is to have kids with CF have normal growth and nutrition, meaning for a kid with CF to grow as a kid who doesn't have CF, and for adult with CF to be able to maintain their nutrition as an adult who doesn't have CF, which back 10 years ago sounded like an outlandish kind of a goal, but nowadays, after pushing really hard, we know that there is a very achievable goal. And in addition, they identify as a major goal to ensure that people with CF have access to care and receive appropriate therapies for managing their disease, meaning that they are not managed by people who don't have really a clue as to how to address their problems. And in addition, that people with CF that have more severe disease will be well supported by their care team, and not just in terms of making decisions when they face the decision about transplantation or life care, but also in terms of getting good support all along the way when it comes to just managing the disease day to day. So just to close, I think that where we really need to get better is as to how we're delivering the care that we know really well how to deliver. If you don't have access or if you're not coming to us, then it's going to be very hard to be able to make any change on any of the health outcomes. And I started showing, how we're organized, and an important piece of what we call the care component of our center is our patient representation. And that pretty much ties in with the next part of the talk, because I think, as I said, this is a partnership. And if I don't hear your voice, I don't hear from you as to where is it that we're failing, what is it that we're not meeting for you, then it's going to be very hard to make anything get any better. So with all that being said, I'd like to invite Chris Benson and Siri Baith, as well as Matt Borak and Lindsay Martins, who are going to talk to us about the advisory groups, which are basically, your means of getting to us as a center. And is really a way for you to be part of how we manage the center. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I committed the horrific error of leaving my home this morning without my glasses. The good news for all of you is you look fabulous. Not a blemish, not a wrinkle in the room. And Sandy, thank you for loaning me these. So if I start bumbling, that's what's going on. I am Siri Vaith. I am the lead parent for the CF Parent Advisory Council for the LPCH aspect of the Advisory Council. You'll hear from Chris about the adult side. And I have a 16-year-old daughter, Tess, who has CF. She was diagnosed here at Stanford in 1995, and I've been involved more or less since then. Before I go on, I have two questions. Who here knew that we had an advisory council for parents? Raise your hands, please. Okay, it's not overwhelming. So it's good that I'm here, and I really want to thank Dr. Mila and Colleen for the time to talk to you about this. And also one last question, how many newly diagnosed parents do we have here? Parents of newly diagnosed children? A couple, okay, good to see you. All right, so when I originally put up the slide, it sort of said, really? Who? What? Because a lot of people don't know that we actually have this group. So who are we? We're a group of concerned parents whose children receive care here, and we work in partnership with the CF Care team to provide the highest quality of care and service to patients and families. And what I really want to stress is that the operative word, and you'll hear it over and over today, is partnership. That we are not a group of parents who came in saying, we're really mad about this, and here's our list of complaints, and that we all share the same goal. We want this to be the best center. We want our kids to thrive. We want our kids to transition to the adult side and thrive. So who are we specifically? Isn't that a lovely photo? Right now there are 3 parents on the committee. Linda Burks, you want to wave your hand, Linda? Just a little bit about who we are as a group. Linda has 6 children, and she has one son, Brian, who's 14 with CF. She has a doctorate in mathematics education or something, and this woman homeschools all 6 of her kids. I'm in awe. I'm in awe. I'm sorry. It's just worthy thing. And then Sandy Schumacher, she is over there waving, and she has a 14-year-old daughter, Casey, with CF. And she worked for many years in the banking industry, is now in the restaurant and retail industry. I have, as I said, Tess, who's 16 with CF. I am an MSW, have worked for Big Brothers Big Sisters for 20 years in many capacities. And then what I like to have here is the CF team is a key part of this committee, and Dr. Mila and Mary Helmers and Colleen Dunn and Kristen Shelton and Zoe Davis regularly come to the meetings, and we have become experts at what I call the hopscotch agenda, because everybody's very busy, rounds are going on, but we make sure everybody gets their time to talk. And I know Ann Robinson back there was also an instrumental part of the team. Kathleen Flynn was on it. Kristen Foss. I should also say, somehow that logo didn't, I don't know if it turned up, we are part of the Family Centered Care Department. We are considered employees under the Family Centered Care Department, and the philosophy is part of the general LPCH philosophy of Family Centered Care, where the healthcare team works in partnership with the parents. And what that means for us is that we went through a pretty detailed screening and training process, which can be challenging. The flip side is we, as part of the CF community, are part of the broader hospital. And as parents, we all know our kids are not just seen by pulmonologists. We're going to the ENT. Many of our kids have liver issues. So we are, multi-faceted users of the system. So we bring a lot of knowledge to the broader hospital. What do we do? What have we done? Somebody said that this morning. What have you accomplished? Well, when you look at it, we've actually done quite a bit. And I have to say, what I didn't say in that last slide, family-centered care, there's a spectrum where the parents aren't seen as partners. The care team sometimes comes to them asking a question, or conversely, the parents are mad about something and bring the issue to the care team. And then it goes all the way up to the full partnership. And I will say that through the years, we have worked our way through the spectrum, and this past year we have really achieved much more of the partnership. So we have the materials out at our table. We are providing input for the transition guide for teens that you all, in the pediatric side, are supposed to carry with you every time to your visit. That's a plug for you, Mary. We have had mentoring for other parents. We've developed support materials, the Supporting Loved Ones, the Guide for Family and Friends, which really came out for the newly diagnosed who you just wonder, how do I get the support I need? This is a nice tool. Okay, the masks. We also last year helped work with the care team to come up with a new infection control brochure. And it was, I see this as just a great representation of the partnership, because I think they had an internal policy, procedure they wanted to implement, and as a team, they got to hear, like, there was concern. Would it be weird for everybody to have to wear masks? And I felt like the care team was more concerned about offending the parents and patients about the masks, and we were saying, please, if we all wear them, it can be quite trendy. I can say Tessa's not done this with hers yet, but we'll see. The website, I had to, you'll just keep plugging, hearing plugs for the website. We gave input for the new website, and I just want to put a plug on there. There are surveys on that website. And can I, Sandy, can you bring me water, please? Sure. Thank you. It's right there. Who here has gone to the website? Okay, not overwhelming again. We helped give input for the updating of the website, and we're really hoping this will be a good tool for everybody. And on this website, there are several surveys that we really want people to fill out. It's very helpful for the care team. It's helpful for the parents. So I hope you will all go there. We used to have a class for newly diagnosed. We used to have support lunches for newly diagnosed families. Let me click on here. What are we working on now? I'm going to take a sip. We are still monitoring the website. And as I said, there are these surveys. One of the things we're talking about this year are the unmet needs of teens. You can tell we're kind of heavily laden with parents with teenagers right now. And I will say, interestingly enough, I communicate with lots of different parents of kids with CF, and depression among teens seems like a very huge issue. So that's something as a committee that we might be looking at. Again, it might be that we need to hear from you all with teens, so there's a survey on the website, so we need you to keep checking in with that. Addressing the unmet needs of the Center of Spanish-speaking patients and families, and Dr. Mila, you can correct me, but about half the kids who are diagnosed through the newborn screening are Latino, and so we have a larger Spanish-speaking population now at the center. And we all know when our kids were diagnosed how disorienting it is, how devastating, and then having to navigate the system as a newly diagnosed family is difficult enough, but when there aren't as many resources in your native language, that's extremely challenging, so we want to look at that. And we want to continue to develop more services for newly diagnosed families. And what I also want to say is, I know it can be boring just listening to a list being read, but please think about these things. What are your thoughts? Where do you think you could give us your input and ideas? So we want to help Colleen and Zoe increase participation in the clinical trials. And you're about to hear from Chris. It's really nice. We're working more with Chris for the adult side now to have a cross-fertilization, which could be good. We are under the one umbrella of the CF Center here, and it will really help our teens as they transition to adult care if we're communicating. Advising Lindsay on social support programs, developing peer mentoring, and increasing parent participation at the center. So we need to hear from you. We hope you'll take the time to go to the website. We hope you'll come to the table and eat chocolates, and I have a little mini questionnaire for people. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me, and there is my address. Thank you very much. And are there any questions? Then am I introducing Chris or Meg? Who's up next? Chris? Chris Benson for the adult side. Sandy's glasses, that would just be terrible.
You just click into it.
You know, all I was doing was sitting right here and
The arrow?
Oh, here comes the guy. Will it go straight to you? Oh, there's my thank you thing. Forgot that one. There we go.
Okay. Hi, I am Chris Benson. I am 33 years old, and I guess you would say I have late-stage cystic fibrosis. I joined the Adult Advisory Council in 2010, and I became the chair this year in 2011. I want to talk a little bit about what motivated me to join the council. To be honest, I was a little frustrated with the care I felt I was receiving at the new adult CF Center, and I stumbled across a council brochure in the waiting room which listed their mission statement, and I'm just going to read that to you now. The Stanford Adult CF Advisory Council provides feedback to and partners with members of the healthcare team to improve the patient and family experiences and care at Stanford University Hospital. The Advisory Council is committed to the betterment and excellence of the entire Cystic Fibrosis Center at Stanford, including pediatric, transitional, and adult care. So previously, I'd written letters and tried to talk to the doctors and the staff about my concerns. So holding this brochure, I was really encouraged and kind of excited, and I thought, wow, what if this is true and we really have this avenue? How great would that be? So I applied to join the council, and I have to admit, I haven't been very active in the CF community up until this point. So at my first meetings, I learned a lot. One thing I was really surprised about was the diversity of the adult group. We have people from the LPCH staff as well as the Stanford staff. We have CF patients ranging from 20 to 50 years old. We have parents, and so it's a really diverse amount of opinions, and we're able to see a large section. I was also happy, sad to learn that I was not alone in my frustrations, but on the other hand, there were others that were not at all unhappy. And then I think the biggest thing that I learned was that our feedback as adults was not reaching the team. Whether that was because we were talking to one another and not sharing it with the team, or we were filling out those forms that come to our house after a clinic visit thinking it's going to that team, where in reality it goes to Stanford and it gets lumped in with the chest clinic. But I think that was one of the things that struck me the most, and I felt like we could really help a larger community if we can get that feedback to the team. And so I sat at meetings, and I listened as the staff talked about how hungry they were to get this feedback, how much they wanted the feedback quickly in the moment. And I admit I was a little bit skeptical. I wasn't sure because, again, I tried to get this feedback and I didn't feel like it was getting through. But I tried again. I wrote a letter again. And I have to say I was so impressed by the Adult CF Center's response. I was impressed by the concern that they showed, how quickly they acted. But even more so, I was really impressed by the questions they asked me. And that spurred myself and the council to go out and try and gather more feedback from patients. And I was really shocked at how hard this feedback was to get. But we did get some. And Dr. Weil actually met with myself and another council member in person, and we went over all of it, and I felt like it was a really direct line to this group. And he's also agreed to meet with us every 3 months, so I feel like we have this amazing avenue to continue to communicate with the team. So I just really, really want to encourage you to contact these councils, because we need to hear the positive and the negative feedback. We need to use this direct avenue for communication. Okay, so I'll get off my soapbox now, but I did want to also show you some things that we're working on. We worked with the CF Center website to have sort of a section our own. There's a section for advisory councils, and you'll find the Adult CF Advisory Council underneath there. This is essentially our homepage, and the reason I wanted to show you this is how to contact us, the email address, the phone number, things like that. And then also we created a helpful links page that I hope will grow over time. But 2 things I specifically wanted to point out here were the Help Us Help You form, which is a form that's supposed to help kind of ease your admission when you're an inpatient. And then the return patient questionnaire, the 3rd bullet here, that's supposed to help you kind of communicate what you're thinking and what you're looking for when you go to an adult clinic visit. Also, as part of the feedback that we gave to the Adult CF Center, they set up another adult town hall meeting. And again, feedback helps, so I hope that we'll all come out there and talk about and discuss the growing Adult CF Center. So again, I'm just hoping that you take home from all of this, both what Suri and I have said, that we want to help, and that this is an amazing opportunity to give feedback. And this is different. This isn't like some of the other things that maybe you felt didn't get anywhere. I witnessed it myself as a CF patient, making changes and getting hurt.
Are your infection protocols on your website?
They are. They're on the flyer that's in your spiral notebook as well. One thing that I forgot to mention is we do have WebEx at our council meetings, which means if you have MRSA or staff or any of those things that prevent you maybe from coming in person, you can call in via video or phone chat.
Hey, Chris, I think that's Wednesday, March 23rd.
Date's wrong by 2 days?
Yeah.
That'd be a long way.
I'm going to have to confirm that, but...
I confirmed it with Kathy.
I know, we've gone, unfortunately, back and forth a couple times on the date because of room availability.
That's good to know.
It was March 23rd, same time, same location.
Okay. Is there a flyer going out or?
Yeah, there is. She's working on it. But I'm sure that it's in the 23rd now.
Okay.
Is there really WebEx for it?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Chris, just to mention, WebEx is not just in place for someone who has cross-infection issues. If you live a distance from Stanford, would like to know what's going on with the adult council. I don't know if the pediatrics site does this, but we set that WebEx up at every meeting, so you can simply monitor it. You have to have an entry, and the website tells you how to join WebEx. But you can monitor what is going on in that room. If you'd like to participate in a discussion, you're welcome to do that. Obviously, if there's a non-member, you can't vote. We also have members who are not voting members. But the WebEx is there for anybody that wants to do this, be involved remotely.
I think that leads into Meg, who has WebEx at her support group, right?
Hi, everybody. My name is Meg Dvorak, and I am the social worker for the adult program. And based on demand from the patients, the advisory council, and just the community in general, people were willing to put themselves out there and start a support group. And so this is also a passion of mine, and it's something I planned for when I first started the job. And I just started the first ever adult support group at Stanford for the adults and their caregivers and loved ones. The group occurs once a month. It's the first Friday of every month from 12 to 1 p.m. And the location is the Li Ka-shing Center for Learning and Knowledge. It's on the 3rd floor. It's a beautiful building. It's brand new, and the room that we have for the group is incredibly spacious and allows for people to have a lot of space between each other. So there's comfort around the cross-infection issues. We do practice the same cross-infection protocols as for any CF-related events such as today or other CFR events. And so far the group has gotten popularity. We started with about 5 or 6 people in the first group, and it grew to 11 people yesterday. And yesterday I was able to launch WebEx for the group for the first time, and we had 3 call-ins from the outside. So people can join the group remotely, either by telephone or on their webcam on their computer, so they can see what's happening in the room and vice versa. And I was a little bit concerned about how that would work in a therapeutic way, but it actually was just fine. It really was. So I'm hoping that more and more people recognize that the group is a wonderful benefit, and it's a way for CF patients to come together for the first time in a long time to share their thoughts and their feelings and their experiences about living with this disease. The information is on the CF website for Stanford. There's a flyer for the group as well as a map. The building is a little bit tricky to find. It's part of the med school community, which is just adjacent to the medical center. I'm also, with the WebEx and everything, I'm sort of new learning this technology, but I'm going to be scheduling all the meetings out for the rest of 2011 on the WebEx, and I'm hoping to get that cut and pasted right onto the website so people have that information easily. I have certain topics that I cover in the group. It's not just an open-ended group, but it's rather specific to certain therapeutic themes based on recovery and healing and living with peace with your disease. So
questions from, say, like a 16-year-old asking if they can come? You can go to the left. Sure. I got questions from 16-year-olds, for example, asking if they can come to the adult support group, and so I just wondered what your answer is to that.
I would like to. I think it would be great. These are people that are pre-transition, and they're going to be in our program in just a matter of years. One of our transitionees is only just turned 18, so I think it will give them a glimpse into the adult world before they're actually there to help with the preparation for the transition. So I definitely want to encourage the young adults, the ones either going through transition or who are about to attend the group, whether remotely or in person. I have flyers for the group in the clinic setting. I can give them out in the hospital, and I can also email you a flyer if you want one. It's been great to be able to include the inpatients in the group too. They're able to get disconnected from their IV, and if they're not contagious with anything dangerous, they can walk over to the group. And oftentimes those are the more vulnerable patients that need that kind of support. I'm looking forward to the group growing and evolving and me learning more and more from my patients who attend. Any other questions?
I'm Lindsay, the lead social worker. How are you guys? I know you guys are anxious to get to lunch, so I'll be really quick. So we have a very informal patient-to-patient connection program that we are trying to make more formalized. But at this point, what I am trying to do with most patients, I know I haven't done it with all
patients, but is to ask them if they'd be interested in speaking to another patient about their disease, about life in general, or just kind of connect with another patient with CF, because we know that a lot of the younger patients are really struggling with their diagnosis and or not wanting to talk about it, and don't maybe know another patient with CF, so it gives them an opportunity to do so. So when I identify a patient that wants to connect with another patient, I email the whole team as well as whoever the physician is to make sure that we're matching appropriate people with each other. And then based on that, I write, depending on the age of the patient, I either email the patient directly with the other patient's information, and or I email the patient and the parent all the contact information. So that way we make sure that, and with all HIPAA and all of that stuff done, but that way we make sure that everyone's on the same page about kind of who's who and what's what about the ages and all of those things. There's no like responsibility, so we can't guarantee that it's going to work or that every patient is going to like the other person they're speaking with. So the whole thing is that if it doesn't work, they can come to me privately and let me know, and then I will go from there to talk to the other patient about why this didn't work. And that's available also for parents, so parents to parents is really important. And then I've been sitting on the adult advisory committee, and all the adults are really eager to start mentoring the older teens about transition. And so we've started some HIPAA consents on that, and I've been offering it to the older teens to talk to the adult patients about this. So we're hoping that most of the patients will take advantage of this, even though a lot of them are not so eager to jump on the bandwagon, but I think in due time we'll get them there. And then the other thing that that I was told by the PEDS advisory committee is that some of the parents would like a support group started. And so we're just in kind of the very infancy stages of this, and we decided that we're going to start with a newborn to toddler support group that will probably run every other month. We're working out the details at this point, and it will probably start in May. So for those of you that are in that section of patients or parents, we will send out a flyer that will come in the mail that will have all the details. And then what I'm hoping for is that as this gets started, if it is something that parents are interested in that have children of other ages or teenagers, that we can open it up. But we wanted to start with a smaller group to make sure that we're meeting specific needs before we like kind of open up to everyone. So if you guys have any questions or concerns, or you feel like ideas that will make this better for our center, I'm open to all ideas. This is something new for me, but I'm totally eager to try and provide the support wherever it's needed. So yeah, do you guys have any questions?
Will we hear more this afternoon if we're in the adult area? Informally, maybe.
And I'm not aware of that. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. Can't speak to that. Yeah. Okay.
About the program that you're setting up for the youth, for the PEDS end, are you setting it up more as a one-to-one mentoring, or is it I'm thinking of the CF camp that we used to have, and it was a safe place where they could learn about each other, learn about what's going on, and is it more like that, but maybe online, or is it a one-to-one?
It's a one-to-one mentoring program. I think eventually we would like to set up something where we could start connecting more groups of people together, per se, online.
We live in Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
I know it seems easy to do, but you know, it's just something that's going to be a slow and process that we're hopefully that we will eventually get there. So, yeah. Any other questions? Oh, right. Yes. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. So it's basically over email or by phone. I try and start by email because I feel like, especially with some of the younger kids, they're a little bit more apt to shoot an email out than they are to talk over the phone. And then if they're feeling better and feeling more comfortable, then they can start speaking over the phone. You know, we just want to make this like to whatever their needs are. So, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so that brings our morning session to a close. We're going to break for lunch, and Colleen has a couple announcements.
So if you guys want to check the bottoms of your chairs, there's something taped to the bottom of one of the chairs in the room to give away just a little something. And if you don't find it under your chair, oh, we found it. Can somebody bring that in for them? And also, we'll get you something in just a second. Before everybody leaves, there are 5 tables, there are 5 tables out this part of the front courtyard, and they are for people to sit together and chat. There's a table for teen parents, the adult advisory table to have lunch with these people, a newborn group, and a research table, as well as the pediatric advisory board, if you people want to sit and have lunch and chat, and then all of the staff will be around as well. And then we'll reconvene at 12:45. Questions? Great. Thank you.
She has an old one from a Korean market 8 years ago. We'll get rid of the old one. It's like clean and old. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a good idea. Off to the floor with you. I can put it on top there. We'll wait for you. Yeah, don't be gone long. We'll text you. She didn't know. Okay, cool. Very good. Very good. So are you guys gonna set up that way?
Yeah, set that way. Yeah? I asked her already. She said it's okay.
Okay. So we're gonna leave those walls open, huh?
Let me ask
Are
her.
we supposed to close